let's begin. So, okay, social media, obviously you all know what it is. So this is an overview of the characteristics of social media in terms of marketing and what brands can do and what brands currently do to reach out to consumers and engage them. So there's a focus in social media on two main issues. One is sharing and the other is remediation. So obviously brands want their content to be shared as much as possible so it reaches the widest possible audience. Remediation, does anyone know what that is? Remediation. Do you know that term? No? Well, the main part of the word is media, so that can be all kinds of media. Remediation in this context is when media is changed or kind of mashed up or altered or edited in some way, that it changes from its original form into something that is maybe more interesting or entertaining or more related to the brand. So the main idea is that this media is spreadable. It doesn't just stay in one place and viewed by a small number of people. It can be disseminated and spread to the maximum possible audience. This idea of user-generated content, you've probably seen this term a lot. So that is when the users, rather than companies, produce content. And very often that content is related to brands. Very often in a positive way, because if people like brands, then they like to engage and interact. But it can also be done in a negative way. If people don't like brands, there's nothing to stop them now from creating kind of videos and other forms of communication that are not particularly favourable to brands. All of this is what's called propagation. So this is creating and spreading content. Okay? So you need to be creative in producing the content, and then you need to also be creative in spreading it. And there's obviously lots of channels and platforms to do that nowadays. A related concept is stickiness. This can be defined in different ways, so this is not the only way you can talk about stickiness. But the basic idea is the same, that it's about measuring your audience and making sure that your online presence is being evaluated and you know how many people are interacting or at least viewing the brand. And a dramatic way of saying, spreadability, if it doesn't spread, it's dead. Okay? So in the digital era that we're now in, if the brand communications don't spread, then the job hasn't been done. This whole notion of personal branding is something that everyone can do. You could argue that personal branding happens to you all the time, even if you don't want it to. Because branding is all about the perceptions, the image that people have of certain things or people or places. And there is the personal brand that you want to have or that you think you have. And then there's the personal brand that you really have, because the brand exists in the mind of the consumer, okay? Not just in your mind. Part of the way in which your personal brand is built is through what other people say about you. And you can't control that. You can contribute to the conversation about it, but you can't completely control it. And it's the same for brands. Brands can plan their communications, plan their image, but the real brand image is in your minds. So personal branding is actually an interesting, exciting opportunity for all of you. If you haven't thought about it yet, then maybe just have a think. What do you want your image to be as a person? And that can be in terms of either business-wise, professionally, making a career, or socially. Socially, you probably already do that, but in terms of employability, definitely LinkedIn is a quick and easy way to set about making sure your personal brand is professional and is what you want it to be, rather than it being nothing or what others make it. So, fandom. Chances are most of you are fans of something. Most people do have a kind of passion or high enthusiasm for either sporting teams or brands of other kinds or certain activities. Now, characteristics of fans are that fans tend to be very enthusiastic, very intense, and they like the rest of the world to know about their passions. So in terms of a brand, you really want to connect and encourage the whole fandom phenomenon. So fandom is what's called a hedonic form of consumer behavior. Hedonic means pleasure. There are some things we do just because we have to. That's more kind of functional behavior. When we do something for pleasure, like playing sport or going to see a film or going to a bar or having a meal or going to a sporting event, these are hedonic occasions. Tends to be products of popular mass culture. Very active, involved, participatory. Are any of you watching the Winter Olympics just now? Are you watching some of it? Yeah. One sport that becomes hugely popular whenever the Winter Olympics come on is curling. I don't know, are you all familiar with curling? Where, on ice, where they kind of slide a stone along and two people have kind of brushes and they brush very, very fast. If you look on Twitter now, you'll see lots of very funny little videos that people have recorded kind of imitating curling. So they'll be in the kitchen and they kind of roll something across the floor and a couple of kids will be kind of brushing away as fast as they can. So that's the kind of participatory part of it. So it's not just people passively sitting watching the sport, it's actually being encouraged to actively do something kind of fun. And again, it helps raise the profile of the whole sport.
So we share on platforms, but then also the platforms share with each other, right? I imagine that most people know most of these. Right? We talked earlier about LinkedIn, which is there. I imagine everyone's heard of Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Given the age of you guys, it's probably likely that you know Snapchat, that you know Pinterest probably as well. Pinterest tends to be more of a female demographic than a male one. But these are sort of platforms that immediately come to people's mind. If you ask 100 people on the street to name social media platforms, you would get each of these 6 at least once from those 100 people. Yes?
How do companies get around the authenticating, their profiles and things, big brands, even some small companies, and how do they find that they own, you're saying about your own company and your name, how do the companies get around that?
So if I understand you correctly, how do companies get around owning their brand in terms of having an authenticated profile from Twitter, for example? Yeah. So with the blue tick that they get.
Across the other social medias, because
yeah.
If they're not quick enough to set them up, for example, then others can take these names.
So there are specialists who specialize in doing exactly that for you as a company. If you already have a copyright, a trademark, etc., you'll find it a lot easier as a company or as an existing brand to take it off of somebody else.
So I just wanted to know, how do you go about obtaining that?
Yeah, it changes all the time. So keep your eyes on it. Just Google for it. How to verify Instagram, how to verify Twitter, because it changes on a day-to-day basis. The time was where they just did it, and then suddenly you woke up one day and there was a blue tick, right? But then it became currency, so people want it now, right? But so this is what we try to achieve, or what many people try to achieve, right? So this is just a diagram of how something goes viral, right? But what you need to imagine is that each of these little people here, or these, each of them is also like this, right? So when 1 tells 3, and then they tell this, and then but each of these people is also telling 3, and then so actually it explodes really, 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 really quickly. If you just multiply by 2, and you start with 4 and multiply by 2, it only takes something like 20 shares to get to 1 million people. It's absolutely crazy when it starts really going up, right? Now we come to your assignment, all right? So in a bit more detail. So please ask about this as well. If there are any questions, that's absolutely what we're here for, the assignment, right? So we've talked a lot about what social media is and how it works and the different possibilities that there are and uses and abuses of it and how it works from two different sides. So what we're specifically looking for is that you to investigate which channels might be appropriate for your agency, right? So which different channels would be appropriate for a digital agency to have? And the assignment itself is to create the social media accounts that you've got or that you decide are relevant and create a post about why you've chosen each of them. Right? So we've chosen YouTube because we want to do interviews with key people within our agency to give clients confidence in our ability, for example. Then.
Okay, any questions? That's basically it for today. Okay. All right, if you do have any questions, then we've got the room for another 5 minutes, so just come down and ask me and Andrew. And if not, we'll see you next week.
Thank you.